Hello and welcome everyone to IT Pro Guide YouTube channel. Mohammed Niaz with you. Today we're gonna see how to configure an Exchange server for high availability within the data center or between the data center for disaster recovery purpose using database availability group. DAG is a feature provided by Exchange server for high availability. So a high available design must include database availability group. Other than database availability group, you need high availability for Outlook Web Access, Outlook Anywhere Access. So this video will give you a complete step-by-step instructions on how to set up an Exchange server, a high available Exchange server within the data center or between the data center for disaster recovery purpose. Let us start from a high-level overview of Exchange server high availability. What you see now in the screen is the minimum required to run an Exchange server as a single standalone Exchange server. And for high availability within the data center, what you can do, you can add one more Exchange server. By that way you achieve high availability within the data center. And to add site resilience between the data center, you can add a third Exchange server. As it is a second site, let us say disaster recovery site, then here you must have an Active Directory server leveraged using Active Directory high availability, which support up to 10 millisecond latency between the subnets. So this is how you can achieve high availability with multiple instances of Exchange server within the data center and also between the data center. So now multiple instances of Exchange servers are available within the data center and also between the data centers. So for the client access high availability like Outlook Anywhere or OVA, all users connected to Exchange server over a single namespace, for example mail.itproguide.com. So if any of the server is down, the clients will be redirected to other Exchange servers for the client access. As it uses a common namespace, for example you can use DNS round robin and add all Exchange server IP to the namespace so that your clients can seamlessly continue to access Exchange servers without any interruption during Exchange server failure. Then for the database high availability within the mailbox server, you can create database availability group and add members Exchange servers to database availability group. So by this way we can maintain database copy between the Exchange servers, and during the failure users will be mounted to a different Exchange server based upon the activation preference that we have given in the DAG configurations. Following are the areas that we need to focus to understand how to achieve an optimum deployment architecture model for Exchange Server 2019 in an on-prem environment. So let us start from namespace. What you see now in the screen is the most recommended model and which is called as unbound model. So when you deploy an Exchange server, you have two options when it comes to namespace: bound model and unbound model. What you see now is the unbound model. So here you deploy your Exchange server with a single worldwide namespace. For example, mail.itproguide.com is the single worldwide namespace that I use in my architecture. So all the users that connect to my Exchange server, whether it is a main data center or secondary data center or DR site, they all use a single namespace called mail.itproguide.com. To achieve this, you need to go to your DNS manager, then add multiple IP to the same record. So it use round robin DNS, or you can use Geo DNS or any other similar solution. So by this way you can distribute the traffic equally across the data center in a site resilient pair. The simplest solution and the least complex and the easier to manage, and my recommendation is to use round robin DNS. The most important parameter when you configure a round robin DNS in an Exchange server architecture is TTL value, time to live value of a DNS record. So you have to ensure that you assign a low TTL value to any of the DNS record associated with Exchange architecture. Because in case of a full data center outage, you remove your DNS record from the DNS manager. So no more queries will be redirected to that offline data center. And a low TTL value like a 5 minutes will help you to get an earlier timeout in your client side also. For the internal network, like the clients within the internal network, the IP address of the internal load balancer is returned. For example, those who access from the site 1, they are routed to 192.168.1.173. And if the client is external, then a public IP is returned. So this approach simplifies the end user experience. Only users have to know a single namespace, for example mail.itproguide.com, to access their data regardless of where they are connecting. So this is called a split brain approach, and this split brain DNS infrastructure also simplifies the configuration of Exchange virtual directories, for example OVA configuration, because the internal URL and external URL values within the environment can be the same value. The second method in namespace is called bound model, which use multiple namespace. For example, instead of mail.itproguide.com, it use two namespaces, mail1.itproguide.com and mail2.itproguide.com. So some users are connected to first data center, which use mail1.itproguide.com, and some other users are connected to mail2.itproguide.com for second data center. But this is not a recommended topology. But there are some cases. For example, if you have a data center located in North America and South America, you might have high latency between the data center, and which can introduce users pain and operational issues. In that case, it makes sense to deploy a bound model with a separate namespace for each region. However, today there are options like Global Traffic Manager from F5. There are so many geographical DNS offers which provide an ability to deploy a single unified namespace even when you have a costly network links. So such GeoDNS solutions allows you to have your users directed to the closest data center based on their client's IP address. Next is about the site resilient data center pair recommendations for Exchange server. So for a high availability between the data center or between multiple sites, the minimum requirement is you need a minimum 2 data center to have high availability between different sites. And also you need to choose a network design with a low round trip network latency, and it is also recommended to keep a redundant network path between the data center. Sometimes it is difficult because of the cost. And also it is highly recommended to have each data center should hold its own active directory as a secondary site. Next is about the server design for high availability. There is no special requirement for high availability other than the requirement for an Exchange server, but it is recommended to have a physical server. But it is recommended to run physical servers and local attached storage, because sometimes the servers are scaled to use 80% of the resources during the worst failover mode, and virtualization also come up with a slight performance penalty, as well as adding an additional layer of management and complexity. So below you can see the recommended hardware, and based upon your organization requirement it may vary, and you need to calculate it based upon the mailbox, based upon the number of users, and also the connections that you're going to hold with the Exchange server. Next is about database availability group, called as DAG, which is a fundamental building block in Exchange server for high availability and site resilient data center pair. You can have one or more DAG, but it is not recommended to stretch a DAG across more than 2 data center. So in the following picture you can see I have 4 Exchange server in 2 data center, and all are members of one database availability group, and each mailbox have 3 copies, 3 passive copy and 1 active copy. And the active copy is mounted at 192.168.1.171, and the other Exchange servers hold a copy of mailbox database. So if something happened to an Exchange server which have an active database, then a passive database will be turned into an active database on another server based upon the activation preference number. And for the network design you can use a teamed network, because now 10 Gbps and 25 Gbps networks are available. So you can use multiple network and team together for redundancy. Or you can use a single network. In that case you need a separate line for the protection and replication. And Microsoft Exchange Database Availability Group use quorum to maintain the database availability. So if you have even number of Exchange members as a node in database availability group, then you need a witness server, which should be a third location with a network infrastructure that is completely isolated for site resilient data center pair. I hope the previous slides and explanations gives you an idea about what is database availability group, how to maintain a high availability of Exchange server within the data center and between the sites. So now let us see a demonstration on how to configure a second Exchange server and how to configure high availability using database availability group. The first step is we're gonna check the site readiness. For example, I have an Exchange server running with an active directory. This is what I have in my site, and I'm gonna add a second Exchange server. Here we start the demonstration. So I'm going to install a second Exchange server. Then we will verify the installation. After that, we will export the SSL certificate from the current server to the new server. Then after that, we need to configure send and receive connector as we did in the first Exchange server. Then we're gonna configure virtual directory configuration for Outlook Anywhere access, auto discover, and RWA access. Then, as we explained, we need a single worldwide namespace. So for that, we need to configure DNS, and then we will be adding the IP address of the second Exchange server to the DNS record. Then we need to move the database to a new drive. By default, the database comes in the folder where we installed Exchange server. So it is a good practice to move to a new drive so you can have a similar drives in the other Exchange server. That is what required for replication. Then we're gonna configure a permission accounts that required for database availability group. Then we will see how to create a database availability group. Finally, we will see a demonstration on how to run the failover and how the active and passive mailboxes are switching between the failures. So let's look at the infrastructure what I have in my demo environment. I have an active directory running 2019 and an Exchange server 2019. Let us log into the Exchange Admin Center and see. When you go to the servers, you can see I have just one Exchange server, that is EXE 2019, and I have two database, both are mounted, and my Exchange server is installed in C drive now. And you can see there is another server ready, Exchange server 2019. This is going to be the second server in the database availability group. I just joined. This is a fresh installed server. I just joined to the domain, that is all. Let's start the installation. Open the PowerShell and run the following command. This is what we require to run before you install an Exchange server. Those who watched my first videos of Exchange Server 2019 might have an understanding about how to install Exchange Server 2019. The only difference between the first installation and the second installation is you don't need to go for a schema upgrade or Active Directory preparation. Else all the steps are same. Next, download a Visual Studio C++ package. All the URLs are given below the video, so you can just click there and download it. Next, we're gonna install Unified Communication Managed API 4.0 runtime. The link for this download is also available below the video. Click next and complete the wizard for the installation. Installation has completed. Click and close all other windows. Now let us run the other commands to install all the features that required for an Exchange server. You need to restart your server after you install these features. Now the features installation has completed. You can restart your server. After that, you can go to your Exchange server setup file and start the installation. Click next, then accept the license agreement. Click next, then select mailbox role. Click next, choose a location to install Exchange server and Exchange server organization name, then click next. Once it complete the prerequisite analysis, then go to install. Now the installation is in progress. Now the installation of Exchange Server second instance has completed. Once you complete the installation of your second instance, log into your second Exchange server, then open Exchange Admin Console. Then let us verify the installation. Now the Exchange Admin Center is ready. Let's go to the server and see the available Exchange servers in your Active Directory. Now I have two Exchange server, exe2 and exe 2019. And look at the virtual directory, you will see external URLs are configured only to the Exchange server that I have installed first one. So we need to configure external URL and internal URL so we can make it a single namespace as I explained. And when you look at the database, you will see a default database has created. Look at the certificates, you will see certificate only assigned to the previous Exchange server or the first Exchange server, not to the new one. When you look at the new one, you will not see any certificates installed. So we need to set up virtual directory, we need to set up certificates, and also we need to configure database availability group. Let us start from the certificate. So I'm gonna export Exchange certificate from the first server to the second server. The location I have entered here is for the new server exe2, and you have to end the certificate name with .pfs and give a password. Once you fill up the details, click OK. Now the Exchange server certificate has exported to the share folder. Now let us install this Exchange certificate to the local machine. Now you can enter the same password what you have put when you export the certificate. Now the certificate has imported. Let's go to the new Exchange server. You can select the server from here. Now you can see the certificate itproguide.com. This is the one we exported from the previous server or the first Exchange server to the new one. So let us go to edit and assign the services. So here you can assign IIS and SMTP. So we finished with certificate export and import to the new server. Next is to configure send connector and receive connector. To configure the send connector, select mail flow, then go to send connector. You don't need to create a new send connector. What you can do is you can edit the existing send connector. Then you can add the new Exchange server to this send connector. For that, go to the scoping, then drag down and select the new Exchange server. Now you added both Exchange to the same send connector. So both Exchange can use this send connector, and based upon your configuration it can send emails. Now go to receive connectors, and you see there are two additional receive connectors other than the default connectors. In the new Exchange server, I have only default connectors. Review the configurations of the additional relays that you have in your first Exchange server, then go and create the same receive connectors in the second Exchange server. So the configuration of receive connectors and send connectors has completed. Next, we're gonna set up the virtual directories. So when you look at the first Exchange server external URL, it is mail.itproguide.com. And look at the new Exchange server URL, there is no URL. And the internal URL will be like the local host name of this Exchange server. To make our job easier, let's use a PowerShell script to set up all the virtual directories. You can download these from the internet, and the link is available below this video. copy to C drive once you complete the download, so you can run from the PowerShell. Now open Exchange Management Shell. So once the Exchange Admin Console is open, you need to run some commands to bypass the execution policies. Once you bypass the execution policy, you can run the PowerShell script that we have just downloaded. Then enter the fully qualified domain name. This is the single namespace that you have to enter. For example, for my first Exchange server, use mail.itprogguide.com. So for the second Exchange server also, I'm going to use mail.itprogguide.com. So complete the PowerShell script wizard for all the OWA, ECP, mail, address book, virtual URLs. Now the configurations required for virtual directory has completed. The configuration of virtual directory has completed with a single worldwide namespace, that is mail.itprogguide.com. So it is time to add the IP address of your Exchange server, the new Exchange server, to the DNS records. For that, here this is the local DNS manager. You can do the same for your public DNS manager, for example to the GoDaddy or any other DNS manager. So open DNS, then go to the A records, then create a new A record, then put mail.itprogguide.com, then enter the IP address of new Exchange server. Now you can see I have two records for the same address, that is mail.itprogguide.com. So it used round robin to redirect the traffic between the servers. When you want to configure database availability group, you need to keep your mailboxes into same volumes. For example, here I have a new volume. That volume name is called E. You need the same volume in other Exchange servers also. So the database will be replicated from this volume to the same volume in other Exchange servers. So here you can see there is two databases, and this database at present it is installed in C drive. To create a new database, you can add a database and give a database and also a database file path name, and choose a server to host this database. For example, DB01, and you can see the database path is C. I'm going to change it to E. So this will come to my new drive which I have just created for database availability group. Anyway, for this demonstration, I'm going to move the existing database to the new volume that I have just created for database availability group. And for that, open Exchange Management Shell, open as an administrator. Copy the PowerShell command, then run in your Exchange Management Shell. So when you copy this command, you need to rename the identity based upon your mailbox database name. Then also you need to give a EDB file path, because in your environment it may be a different drive name. Now the logs and database will be moved to the new drive. And during this operation, the database will be temporarily dismounted and it will be inaccessible to all the users in their database. Now you can repeat the same method for all other databases if you want to move to a different drive other than C drive or any other drives. The most important part in creating high availability for Exchange Server is Database Availability Group, that is called DAG, which is the base of high availability and site resilience, which provide automatic recovery for server and database failures. Basically, DAG is a Windows failover cluster which used to replicate the data between each exchange members. So you can have multiple exchange in one database availability group. When you add an exchange member to the DAG group, the Windows failover cluster role will be automatically enabled. So the member on the Exchange Server DAG can have one or more copies for database. Using those copies, database level failure will happen. In this demonstration, I'm going to show you how to configure a DAG for Exchange Server 2019. We have two node members and we need a one file share witness server. This file share witness server, we will use our Active Directory. So one witness server with the Active Directory role and two Exchange Server 2019. When we start the DAG configuration, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add witness servers local administrator group. Here it is an Active Directory server as an Exchange trusted system member in Active Directory. Open Active Directory users and computers. Then go to administrators group, then select members and add Exchange trusted systems, then click OK. So let us create a database availability group. For that, open your Exchange Admin Center, then go to servers, then database availability group, then give a name for database availability group. Then give a witness server address, fully qualified domain name, then enter a witness directory location. If you don't have this folder ready at this location, it will automatically create. Now I'm gonna add Exchange servers to this DAG database availability group. So I just select one Exchange server. I can select both together. For the demonstration, I'm gonna add one. You can see the operation progress there. Now Exchange server has added to the DAG successfully. Repeat the same step to add the second server. Now I'm gonna add the second server to the same database availability group. You can do this together or you can do separately. Now the DAG is ready and the Exchange servers are members of this DAG. When you look at the database, you can see this database is saved in E drive in the first server. And when you go to the second server and open the E drive, you will not see anything there because there is no data or no copy available at this location at present. So now I'm gonna create a copy of MDB01 to Exchange Server 2. For that, select the database and add a copy, and you can see an activation preference number is 2, and you have to browse there and select where you want to create the copy. So I choose exe2. The current server is exe2019 and the activation preference number is 2. Once it complete the seeding, let us do the same operation for the second database. For that, select the second database and create a copy and select the second server and put an activation preference number, then click save. Now let us go to the E drive, the empty drive that we found before we created database copy, and you can see a program file folder is there, and when you open it you will see two databases and the log folder. So a copy has created in the second server. You can see the status of database copies, active mounted and passive healthy. So here, for example, database 01 is actively mounted on Exchange 2019 and passive health on second Exchange server. So what we can do now, I can activate the database on the second server by simply clicking activate. So if you have a planned failover, this is the best step. You can just click activate on the available server. Then you can do your maintenance. You can restart the Exchange server. Then once it is back, you can remount it or reactivate it. Okay, now it is activated in the second server. You can see active mounted and the first copy is passive healthy. Now this time you can restart the first Exchange server as all the users are connected to the second Exchange server. The second database is still mounted to the first Exchange server. I'm gonna power off the first Exchange server to see whether it automatically mount in the second server. So the first server is off now. Let us refresh and see the status of mounting back to the second Exchange server. You can see the passive service down. That is the status now. And the second database, which was actively mounted in the first server, you can see the passive disconnected and healthy. That is the second status. Now you can see it is actively mounting and the passive service down in the first Exchange server, which we just powered off, active mounted. So now all the users are connected. As we powered off manually, there will be interruption until it get mounted to the second Exchange server. So we saw both scenarios. That is all. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed this video. For more videos, subscribe my YouTube channel.